are talking The Nameless Days. This one is directed and written by Andrew Meacham and Matthew Waden. It stars no one you've really ever heard, although it has this guy in it who is uncannily looking like Will Ferrell, and it's somewhat distracting, I will say, but there you go. And The Nameless Days refers to this kind of Aztec kind of legend, I suppose, where there's certain days that aren't allocated on the calendar where the spirits can come back and such. And the story focuses on this character called Nicole. And she is this kind of young girl who is living with her kind of father, who is a little bit of a kind of, you know, the town drunk after his losing his wife some years before. And they live on the kind of the US-Mexico border, and they're constantly kind of having to deal with people coming over from Mexico illegally, you know, getting into the US and such. However, this time there seems to be something else out there as well. It happens to be, I guess, these nameless days, and we not only have a lot of kind of immigrants that are trying to kind of get over, well, a few, but we also have this kind of, I guess, spirit that is also on the hunt, in particular for any type of babies. Now, what'll happen? You'll have to watch the movie and find out. So let's talk about, first of all, I think works in this movie. The actual kind of antagonist, I suppose, it looks pretty good. They've got a good prosthetic look of this kind of female villain with a kind of a really kind of messed up face and almost like a kind of raptor-like kind of claw on her hand, which she used to sort of slice open bellies of victims. So I think aesthetically, at least, I think she looks kind of pretty good. And I have to say, to go along with that, there is some decent kind of cinematography here with this kind of creature emerging from the kind of the misty darkness. And kind of, yeah, it looks a little bit like too much dry ice, to be honest with you. But I have to say, nonetheless, it does still look like a quite a striking image, albeit a little bit too much on the old mist there. But I kind of liked it nonetheless. I thought our cast did a pretty good job here. You know, everyone I think was perfectly fine in their roles. There was no kind of clunkers, no one kind of took me out. Everyone kind of got on with their roles here. And I think it's like an interesting setup where we have sequences that are both shot, you know, in the kind of the US side and the kind of the Mexican side, with kind of characters kind of crossing over from one way or another and stuff like this. So it kind of gives us this sort of an interesting kind of location, and the actual location and the fact that it's on this border is almost like kind of a character in itself. We've heard that kind of phrase thrown about a few times, but I actually kind of quite liked it. It gave it some extra added element, I think, with this particular location would bring that maybe you know, just a kind of more an inland location may not have got, because obviously it has this kind of added element where you've got the border patrol. There's lots of kind of human trafficking, and we see a little bit of that in the movie as well. So I kind of quite like this. The actual I think main character comes across as a kind of quite a likeable kind of character, but also a flawed character, where she is having to kind of hurt her father's feelings in regards to, you know, she wants to kind of go and have her own life and things. It's, you know, it's somewhat kind of typical for these films, but I thought, you know, the characterization, at least I think we got a good flavour of these people and how they kind of live their lives and kind of stuff like this. And as kind of a horror movie goes, and scares and stuff like that, as I said, I thought the prosthetics all looked pretty good. There's a, you know, use of practical over kind of CGI here. And there are a couple of kind of fun kind of jump scares, and as I say, I quite like the way the cinematography kind of pluses the creepiness, and it's all kind of like very good, but nothing kind of spectacular in regards to things like score and stuff. You know, that kind of stuff. There's a few typical kind of jump scares and whatnot. What doesn't work for me. Let's just circle back to this antagonist for a second. So I quite like the look of this kind of creature, so to speak, creature, spirit, and herein lies the problem, where I think it's a little ill-defined in what it actually is. Because we hear legends, we get told a little bit of exposition about, oh yeah, this creature exists for 5 days a year or something like that, and you know, you can't kill it, you have to try and get away from it. But when it comes down to it, this creature is completely corporeal, and it's really no different from like a woman with a knife, because that's all it is. It's a woman with you can't kill it, but let me put it like this: it's about as dangerous as running away from a woman with a knife, which I guess still has an element of danger, but I didn't really feel it had this kind of like omnipresence, if that makes sense. It didn't really feel that particularly kind of threatening. I mean, it does kill a few people, but it seems to be completely kind of able to be pushed and punched and things like this, and you might not kill it, but it will kind of certainly knock it back, and it kind of just walks at kind of normal human speed, and yeah. So I gotta say, I think they could have done a better job making this thing seem more ethereal, maybe less kind of like just like a woman walking around. Yeah, she kind of looks messed up and stuff, but I don't really feel she was all of that of a presence. Now, the movie kind of makes us think she's a presence because we have lots of kind of bodies that drop, but you know, you're not really seeing that on the screen. You're not really seeing a real kind of genuine threat here. And I have to say as well, the movie, unfortunately, when we get these kills, the camera is nowhere to be seen. You know, a lot of these kills are kind of off screen. Maybe it's a question of budget. Maybe it's a question the movie thinks it's being kind of more scary with having these things off camera and to use your imagination. But I feel you can get away with like one of those, but it happens more than once. And I feel this movie doesn't do a good enough job of really selling you on the danger of this, both through the actual physics of the actual creature, and then we don't, you know, it's all off screen, and we kind of, oh, there's a body there, or something must have happened, things like that. So I think the creature is of mixed effects, shall we say. The story itself, although it's completely serviceable, it's nothing outstanding, and I think there could have been a little bit more done with regards to the kind of the border. You know, we have these, you know, we see some people smuggling at the beginning of the movie, and I thought maybe this was going to form part of the story as well. We might have like to deal with maybe cartel members or something like that, and it'll kind of inform part of this unique kind of like element the movie has. But it doesn't really do a lot with it, unfortunately. It just is there to have these people wanting to go from point A to point B, unfortunately. And outside of that, it doesn't really, you know, have much of a particular kind of relevance to the actual kind of plot itself. There are some questionable decisions made by characters. I will give you one that happens relatively kind of early on, but there are a number of things here that just don't seem to kind of make sense in regards to why would people do certain things. So, you know, we learn that this kind of this daughter and the father, they learn that there have been some border patrol cars on the Mexican side killed a very short distance from their house. And we see that there is this kind of intruder in their house at one point, just prior to that. Now, any rational person would assume that the person who's in there, the person that's in their house, this intruder, at least may be responsible for these two dead border guards on the other side of the fence. But we see, after learning this daughter kind of finds this guy again, this kind of guy who broke into the house, and just is immediately sympathetic. And they're just like, come on. I mean, granted, yes, at this point they don't know about this kind of supernatural force, but you would just put two and two together. It might not be the correct answer, but with the evidence that you have at your disposal, you surely would question it, but she doesn't. So we have these kind of like very illogical kind of decisions and choices that kind of characters make, things like this. And then we kind of see silly moments in the movie. There's a moment where they're trying to fix this particular truck, and the creature just seems to be there and opens a kind of door, and no one seems to kind of notice, even though they're standing right there. Things like this. So there's some kind of silly moments in the actual kind of movie itself. And I gotta be honest with you, I think that there's this weird pacing issue at some points as well. It just seems to kind of like have these long sequences and long scenes that I think are meant to be for dramatic effects, but it just kind of feels like it's just being dragged out a little bit and kind of slows the film down just a tad, to be honest. But yeah, it's kind of just not enough there, really. I just don't think there's enough there to really kind of you could have with more plot. As I say, you could have maybe used the fact this is on a border and have a bit more to do with that. I don't know. It's the movie itself, I think, is okay. This is one of these films where, you know, it's a serviceable, lackluster horror movie that is neither kind of bad nor good. So you may be, you know, guessing where I'm going with this review here. But I think it was watchable. I thought the creature effects were okay, and you know, all the acting was perfectly fine. It just doesn't really stand out, and I don't think really takes advantage of the unique selling points that the movie kind of gives itself, and ultimately becomes generic. So it's a 5 out of 10 for me. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.